Hello, this is Michael Patrick. As we examine leadership issues in media, it's important that we understand the nature of convergence and how that is affecting every media organization in its transition to a multimedia world. So we want to take a look at the process of convergence, and then as we begin to explore leadership, we'll be able to put it in the context of what's happening inside these media organizations. Convergence is really a verb. It's describing a developmental process or transition activity, typically from a mass media form such as a newspaper or television station to a multimedia form that may include a variety of media in its expression. So we want to start by taking a look at how that naturally takes place in the life of a media organization. You have an original media, let's use for example a newspaper, and it really needs to reach out and broaden its base and find ways to reach new audiences, and so they form a new media. They create a website, and some of the first things that they're going to do with that new website is to use it for cross-promotion. If you own a variety of television and radio and newspaper stations and newspaper outlets and stations in, say, a group media organization, it uses those multimedia organizations to cross-promote. It's a rather old process, and it is the easy first step to connect to that new media. And so when that singular media decides to create that new form, it usually begins with cross-promotion, and they operate as completely separate media. The second phase in that convergence step between the original media and the new media organization, in addition to cross-promotion, is that they will begin to clone or have shovelware of content from the original media to the new media. A newspaper will typically just simply rerun the stories that it had for the morning paper and load them into the new media. It might change them slightly, but it's basically just cloning and shovelware the content. They're not necessarily creating a lot of new content in that new media. You'll see this a lot in television stations, and that might just simply take the content from their broadcast and maybe create a transcript from it, but basically just dump it into the new media. This is the kind of cloning or shovelware stage, and a lot of media outlets have moved past this. But if you look around at say a local newspaper in a small community that's trying to keep a website going, that's basically what they're doing. They're just simply shoveling the content onto the website. Beyond in a kind of third phase, beyond the new media, you will begin to see not only the cross-promotion and the cloning process, but you'll begin to see some cooperation and competition. This is probably the most volatile stage, where some of the things we're going to discuss and explore in leadership really come into play. Because you have an environment where you have two different media organizations really existing, the original media outlet and the new media outlet, and these teams of reporters or producers or content creators are competing and sometimes cooperating, but there's often a very visible culture clash. In the local newspaper in our community, they literally were housed in two different locations, and the newspaper reporters didn't want their stories breaking first on the website, and the website people felt like they were really not getting the full advantage of resources in the same way that the newspaper people were receiving. So there was some cooperation, yes, editorially. Maybe they would share what's happening with each other in terms of news events, but they operated quite independent of each other, and there was a degree of competition. This is where the culture clash is the sharpest. One of the issues that will come up over and over again as we look at processes of leadership and theory of leadership is how we deal with this culture clash. and work through that. The next phase in that process between the original media and the new media, not only do we have cross-promotion and some cloning or shovelware taking place, there is some cooperation and competition that's shifting, but then we will begin to see real content sharing. There reaches a point where they begin to realize, we don't have to send people from both organizations. We can begin to share content, and we can assign a story to someone on the new media team. They might cover the story and provide content back to the original media, and vice versa. The people in the original media begin to realize they need to be able to help create content for the new media as well. So, for instance, a beat reporter for the original newspaper might also write a blog where he explores some additional aspects of a particular story that he's covering, and then that is shared in the new media environment. So that content sharing begins to grow, the cooperation begins to grow, and we actually see there's a lot of just budgetary forces that push the organization and pull the organization into more content sharing and more cooperation. And with the proper leadership, the competition is kept at a positive level. And so that kind of is at the fourth phase there. And I'm putting a lot of arrows here because each one of these things is still in operation and influencing each other in this process. So there's a lot of feedback that goes on in terms of content and material flowing back and forth between the two largely separate organizations. And finally, the next major phase in convergence is when the organization ceases to be two organizations and there's really a unified multimedia organization. And it begins to see that it is gathering and creating content, and it's then expressing that multiple or mixed media through a variety of different distribution formats. And it's the development of the multimedia reporter-producer. There was an article recently in one of the papers, I believe I'll have to look if it was USA Today or Wall Street Journal. It may have been Wall Street Journal, where reporters saying, look, we're expected to do everything now. We're expected to know not just newspapers, but to how to work in video. And you develop a team of people that pool that information, pool that content, pool the assignments, and then simply express it in different forms of media. And it becomes a much more unified organization. And in doing so, they can adapt much more rapidly to new opportunities to put their information into the marketplace. For example, if they have already developed this sort of unified organization, it becomes much more easy to assemble the graphics, the video, the audio, the text, and to put things together, say for an expression, into mobile technology. So this is the process or phase 5 of full convergence. And as we begin to look at media organizations, we're going to look at the various forces that are moving them along that continuum. And we're also going to look at some of the leadership principles that will help you, as you're working in these organizations, to begin to help navigate to that more fully converged environment.